right, I'm back with another This Week at Tassi. It's a double video day, but I wanted to make sure to get this in too. Another busy week for gaming. It's kind of always a busy week for gaming these days. I wrapped up Monster Hunter Wilds. I'm playing the new Destiny Act. But in terms of actual news stories, there are a few I wanted to highlight this week. We will start with the wild success of Split Fiction. This is the new game from Hazelight, which is the co-op slash couch co-op best reviewed game of the year so far. It's got a 91 on Metacritic. That has been rewarded with great success. That has racked up at least, I think, a couple 100,000 concurrent players on Steam. And now we know that it has sold 2 million copies in its first week. Again, this is a very smaller scale game. This is something outside of pretty much any of the genres that are released these days. There's very much nothing like it. This is, of course, the same studio who did It Takes Two, which was game of the year in, I want to say 22 or 23, and that ended up selling 25 million copies as word kind of spread about how fun that is. These games have a lot of appeal because it is a rare title that you can play with an actual person near you, if you own a second controller, that is, because Lord knows there are not that many reasons for one now. This has proven to be a really popular game among, just friends, among partners, and I've seen a lot of parents playing this with their kids as a way to, connect in a, it's different than putting on a Fortnite headset and going in two different rooms with, consoles or whatever. It's really great to see a game like this succeeding, given that there's just so many of the same things over and over and over again. So many shooters, so many things that are trend chasing, trend following, but here stands Hazelight all on its own doing something kind of wholly unique. I think the industry lately has tended to reward stuff like that has broken out and become really good. That obviously happened with It Takes Two this past year. Really innovative platformer Astrobot won Game of the Year. So, and before that, I would even say Baldur's Gate is high quality, but it's also something that is not developed all that much, a TTRPG of that scope and depth. A lot of these kind of samey products are not just getting the same kind of acclaim or the same kind of looks, even though a lot of them will still sell really well and be played by zillions of people. But love to see Split Fiction succeeding. If I can convince anyone to play it with me. My son's too young, my wife's too busy. Maybe I'll play with Evie. But yeah, I definitely, everything I've seen from it looks very funny. It looks like a very funny game, but certainly happy to see that succeed. We'll switch over to the report this week that an Xbox handheld is coming, except not really an Xbox handheld, like kind of, but it's essentially Xbox trying to make its own version of Steam Deck as a way to have sort of an Xbox branded play anywhere device, except it's not like the Switch. It's not just like, you turn it on, it's natively playing your existing Xbox library. It's got, Xbox power, all that stuff. It is, a third-party manufactured device that will be, themed like Xbox, the buttons, like some of the features, but it's running Windows, I believe. We don't know all the details about it, but the idea here is that it's PC focused. So that would be, Xbox Play Anywhere games. That would be, the Windows Store in terms of, your library from Xbox would transfer in terms of the games, the first-party games that you've have access to that can also be played on PC. But obviously, those are only first-party games. It's not just like your entire library is available there. I do think this is a good idea for Xbox in terms of at least branding a Play Anywhere system to kind of expand your, the way you can play games on that without it being like you can play on an iPad and like it. I get it, but I think having a dedicated Xbox branded device is a good idea. I do think it might be something of a niche because it's, again, a little more complicated than just being an Xbox handheld, which I think Microsoft is going to make a full-on one eventually, but this is not that. But it's also, for more dedicated players, the question of why you would get that over a Steam Deck is one that I'm not sure it can really answer, and I don't think it's for that crowd. It's probably more for the Switch crowd, but it's sort of straddling the line between the two. I don't think we have a date when it's coming out, supposedly by the end of this year, but maybe not. Maybe in time for the holiday. We'll see how it does. Even devices that don't seem like they super make sense, like the PlayStation Portal, like at first I was like, is there really a market for that? But like that sold decently well. So the same thing might happen with Xbox here, but I think leaning more into the handheld space in whatever form is a good idea for Xbox if they're going to be moving away from normal console hardware at some point. If you're still going to have hardware, then this seems like a good way to kind of evolve that. Another story this week, it was the kind of surprise that it apparently is going to be the case that an Elder Scrolls Oblivion remake is going to be out within a couple of months, maybe next month, sometime before June, so sometime in the next 1 to 2 months. We have seen this leaked for a long time now. It was leaked by some insiders, and then in some court documents, it was leaked in like Xbox's future plans, except those future plans were from the past. So I think this was originally scheduled for 2022, so it's 2025, so hopefully it's ready now. This is a remake of a game that came out in 2006, if you want to feel very old, and it has to be like a full remake. This game is being remade in Unreal Engine 5, which is obviously going to be quite different than what we saw originally, and it's not Bethesda, it's a third-party studio who has done a great job with this so far. But I wanted to kind of touch on what they said would be the changes here. This is by Virtuous, who does a lot of, this kind of work on big games. They're doing a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3. They are changing some of the core systems a little bit, or at least kind of updating them because they're 19 years old. One is the HUD, which they're trying to make easier to understand for new players. One is stamina, which, is for sprinting and things, but also when it's depleted, you can be knocked down all the time. I think they're making that a little more forgiving. Hit reactions meant to improve the way combat feels, blocking to be more important and, quote, inspired by Souls-like games. Sneaking, some more kind of indicators about whether you're sneaking well or not. And then archery, kind of updating that to be better in both third and first-person play. Who's doing archery in third person? Why would you do that? So anyway, your stealth archer build will be heavily, more of a viable thing in Oblivion than perhaps it used to be. And all your training in Skyrim may have prepared you for this. That's something I'm certainly interested in. Oblivion was one of my favorite games at the time, way back when, apparently. And I'm certainly curious to see what the whole game being remade in Unreal 5 looks like. I don't think there are any officially released shots of it or video or anything like that. It's mostly people like doing mods and things for AI to like show what it would look like upgraded. If it's coming out within a month or two, I would either expect something to be out soon about it, or I wonder if this is just going to be a stealth launch, albeit, if it's already leaking, so maybe not as stealthy. And I don't know if the platforms are decided, but I have to imagine this is coming out on PlayStation also. Maybe that was announced, but I haven't seen it. So that's something I'm looking forward to, certainly, and not something I was expecting to see, before summer even hits here. So that's cool. Big development in the world of mobile, which I would not normally focus on, except this is about one of the only mobile games I've ever played in depth, Pokemon Go. Niantic has been struggling to replicate any level of success even close to Pokemon Go since that game was released several years ago. And now they are selling off Pokemon Go in also pretty much its entire gaming business, which includes some other games like Marvel Strike Force and a couple of apps, to Scopely. And Scopely is a company that makes Monopoly Go, which sounds goofy. Oh, portable Monopoly. That game has made $3 billion. So quite a lot of money. I'm certainly not hooked into the mobile scene very often, but like it's a crazy popular game. And obviously Pokemon Go used to be crazy popular. It's still certainly widely played compared to other mobile games, and it's still being developed. But obviously there comes some concerns from the remaining player base about what things might change as it moves over to Scopely. The team is moving over, I think, almost entirely. And the current kind of head of the game has issued a lot of statements kind of reassuring fans that like, no, this is good. We're going to have more resources. We're going to put more features into the game, which may be true. I mean, Scopely has way more money than Niantic. I don't know what Niantic is doing now. I didn't even know they had divisions that weren't gaming divisions. We've seen them really try and sort of fail to replicate Pokemon Go's success with other titles in this vein. Its one before this was Ingress. I didn't see that mentioned in terms of being sold, but we'll see. They had a Harry Potter Pokemon Go game. I think that shut down, where it was so ridiculous. It was like, oh, a wild magical cabinet appeared. Like, catch that with a spell. It's like, this doesn't. Pokemon Go is like very much one singular concept of like catching things outside, and that does not work for a lot of other games. And it did not really spark some giant outdoor play revolution the way some thought it might. But I don't know. I think it's certainly something to be concerned about. I know Scopely has some monetization practices that people are not wild about. But we'll see what happens. I'm not sure when that handover is, but it's certainly a big deal. They bought it for $3.5 billion. So that's certainly significant. That is how much Sony bought Bungie for. That is, I think, close to double what Ubisoft is worth right now. Something like that. So that's a hefty purchase. But this is mobile, and this is a giant market where stuff like that is certainly not unheard of. Finally, something I wrote about today is the potential price of the Nintendo Switch 2. There's an elaborate Bloomberg article about this. There's IGN talking to analysts and things. And it's a range, but pretty much no one thinks it's going to be $300 again, like the original Switch. The original Switch was out in 2017, and yes, it's true that gaming hardware, gaming software is kind of immune to inflation to some extent, or immune to big price changes. It's probably not going to happen this time. Purely inflation, $300 in 2017 is $400 now, which, lovely. We don't know what might happen with tariffs. There are tariffs going on and off with all these different countries right now with Trump. I don't know if this is going to affect Japan or manufacturing or parts that are for the Switch or whatever, but we don't really know. That can very much increase the price of video game hardware if some tariffs go into effect in Asia, but we just don't know yet. There is the cost of parts going up. One analyst said a chip that costs $80 now may cost anywhere from like $130 to $150 for the Switch 2. That person predicted a $500 price. The range is pretty much $400, $450, $500, somewhere in there. I would say $400. It just doesn't seem very likely to me that Nintendo would go over that. Nintendo is not exactly known for overpricing consoles, and it's okay if consoles sell at a loss for a while. That's just something that sort of happens most of the time. $500 for Switch seems, I can't see it, even if costs are higher, but I guess we'll see. We don't know the release date. I just saw some third party was like, sent some email. It's like the Nintendo Switch 2 is out this summer. And it's like, are you supposed to say that? I don't know if that's true. The timing of that seems like it could line up. They just did the reveal. They're doing a software showcase in like 2 weeks. And it's not uncommon these days for something big to be revealed and then come out, I don't know, 6 months later or something like that. So summer seems possible, if certainly not by the fall and holiday time there. The point of this is like, it doesn't matter. It's going to sell incredibly well regardless. The original Switch has now sold 150 million copies, making it the third best-selling piece of video game hardware of all time. The DS, I think, has 154. So if 4 million more Switches sell, which seems likely, it'll be the number 2 one. So some analysts are predicting like 20 million sales in its first year. Seems certainly possible. I would not rule that out at all. The Switch 2 is a clear sequel to the Switch, I would say, because they named it Switch 2. They didn't name it like Switch U or something more confusing. I think they learned that lesson with the Wii U. All the pieces are in place for a big launch there. Some of this depends on launch titles. If there's not that many big launch titles, people might just be like, well, it's backwards compatible, so I have all these games anyway on my current Switch. But if it's like a new Mario Kart, I don't think Mario Party would do it. This Mario Kart game that they've shown off comes out at launch. Mario Kart is always one of the biggest games on Nintendo consoles, if not the biggest, I think. That may just be enough to push people over the edge. They could have another fully new Mario game. I don't know about a Zelda game that soon, but they have all these IPs to draw on for, making this a big attractive feature, and it's going to be huge, but it's going to be more expensive. So those are the big stories. One last one. So the Invincible finale aired and it was awesome. And then right after that, Robert Kirkman said that the new Invincible game, which I forgot was a thing, is still in development, and he thinks it's the best Invincible related thing they've done yet. So that's promising. I have no idea about details about this game. I think I need to dig into that a little more to see what's going on with that. But I'd love to play an Invincible game. Sure, why not? Yeah. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.